I come here every day before I go to work on the mountain to talk to my girlfriend. Like that. Check, check, check. All right. All right, so I was corresponding with a longtime Sea Realm guest this morning, whose name I will not mention, for fear of being accused of name dropping. Am I afraid of that? No, just I guess I find name dropping distasteful. Anyway, going back and forth, telling him about snowmaking. I told him a lot more about snowmaking than I'm going to tell you, simply for purposes of job security on my part. I'm just not supposed to share anything. The snowmaking world is globally, the snowmaking world is very small. Apparently there's a Facebook group devoted to it where, anybody who is anybody in snowmaking is monitoring that group. As you know, I'm not on Facebook, so I'm not a participant to that. There is a snowmaking subreddit that I've had some interaction with. Anyway, today, preparing for the next episode of the Sea Realm Vault podcast, I read one article by, I think her name is Heather Haying. She is the wife of Brett Weinstein. They, I believe, both worked at Evergreen College and both had to flee when that whole fracas went off. And they do the Dark Horse podcast together. One that I don't watch much, in fact, very little at all. Mostly because of the COVID focus. Like during COVID, I said, I'm not interested in anybody's COVID craziness. Either the side that said this is a disaster, everybody has to wear masks forever. I had one friend, like a real world friend, who said that because of COVID, the new standard has to be one person, one building, and nobody goes into anybody else's building. And I think that is fucking insane. And I absolutely refuse to even entertain that as a possibility. And I don't know if he's still on that. I haven't talked to him recently. But I don't want to hear about anybody's COVID craziness. I don't want to hear your fucking stupid conspiracy theories. And I don't want your goddamn hysteria, So I'm not interested in anybody's COVID conspiracy nonsense or their COVID, hyper conformity nonsense. I just don't have any interest in interacting with that mindset, either one, at all. Anyway, the two articles that I read today, three articles, one was from Heather, the other two were from Richard Hanania, somebody who I hold a grudge against because he agreed to come on my podcast and then backed out because I wasn't mainstream. But anyway, I still read his stuff. I like his stuff. And two articles I read today. One is about big trans and how basically conservatives are being duped by being, suckered into basing their politics on, trans cultural furor, just the outrage. His point is, and just looking at the numbers, more 6 to 17-year-olds, I think, is the figure that he posed. More kids in the age range, who are really susceptible to the trans mind virus and being prescribed hormone blockers or having gender-affirming surgery. The number of kids actually affected by that is much smaller than the number of kids who are murdered each year, who are just straight up killed, So the idea that we should be super hyper focused on this trans thing is irrational, according to Richard Hanania. And then he goes on to say, look, more people die every year because they can't get a kidney transplant because Congress banned the sale of organs in the 80s. And that this anti-market bias kills more people than are harmed by the trans mind virus and the people who perpetuate it, and who inflict it on children. And then the first comment I thought to this article was really good. Somebody says, it's not about numbers, it's about our kids. You're probably not a parent, but we are worried that when we send our kids off to school, they are going to be indoctrinated in such a way that they will insist that, they're trans, that they claim this special protected status, that being a straight kid, a cis kid, not cool, not a protected status. In fact, it's denigrated, it's vilified. And so, kids are given in public schools and other places a very strong social incentive to identify as, some what used to be a sexual minority, and which in fact still is a sexual minority. Many of these are just straight up straight kids, you know, who see the advantages in identifying, if nothing else, as bi. You know, at least you're not straight. But this commenter was saying to Richard Hanania, look, we're worried about our kids. This is not an abstract concern. This is not, and I'm paraphrasing and adding to the commenter now, but this is not an abstract concern. This is not an ideological concern. This is a basic biological imperative. Look after your kids. Protect your kids from harmful strangers. You know, that's whatever numbers you want to throw up in terms of how many kids are affected versus how many people are harmed by a lack of kidneys for sale. Irrelevant. This is primal parental psychological directives inscribed in our very souls by millions of years of evolution. And the person, you know, whose comment I'm paraphrasing and elaborating on didn't mention evolution, didn't mention any of that. This is all my addition. I'll grab a screenshot of the actual comment and put it up so you can see how much I'm embellishing as I paraphrase it. The other article, and this is going to sound so dull, is about the difference between ordinal preferences and cardinal preferences. I'm not going to dwell on that, other than to say ordinal just means in order, you know, in a sequence. When you go to vote, you know, we don't have ranked choice voting. We just have you vote for the one person. So, you know, it's a sequence of one. But, you know, if we had ranked choice voting, say you could vote for your preferred third party candidate or independent candidate whose politics exactly match yours, and then cast a follow-up, you know, or a safety vote for the mainstream party that you hate the least. You're creating an order of preference. These are ordinal values or ordinal concerns. The other being cardinal. You know, in voting, it doesn't matter how much you hate one candidate or how much you approve of the other. All that matters is the one that you vote for. It's an ordinal choice. You're creating an order. The difference, though, and that's good enough to win elections, says Richard Hanania, and that makes sense. The cardinal priorities, or the cardinal, I forget the exact terminology that he uses, but you know, the cardinal concerns measure the magnitude of how much you hate the other guy or how much you desperately want your policies to be enacted. And Richard Hanania talks about how in academia and journalism, these are two career fields that attract high IQ, idealistic people, but the prospects for them succeeding in either of these industries or fields are very minute. I mean, there's a lot of people who are drawn to it for ideological reasons, for, you know, aspirational reasons, or for reasons like, in my case, I could make a lot more money if I decided that it just wasn't important to me that I make my living as some sort of artist or public intellectual or something. You know, I could probably rise through the ranks of Walmart and become a store manager and make a shit ton more money than I do talking to you right now. You know, even with the snowmaking on the side. But I don't, because I have these aspirations, and I have, you know, I'm not going to be shy or falsely humble. I'm a smart person. And here I am, this ideologically, I'm not particularly ideological, except, you know, in my aversion to ideology in general, but I am very attracted to abstraction. And, you know, that plus a desire to live in a certain way, and to, you know, not be constricted by things like a job that goes year round that I have to be at 5 days a week or whatever. It draws me to a lifestyle that has very low material benefit. I mean, I live in the United States of America in the heart of the empire, so even as a poor person here, I'm doing pretty well, you know, globally speaking. But I could do a lot better materially if I took the conservative attitude. So Richard Hanania's point is that conservatives care enough to show up and vote. And they care enough to, like, find their ID and have their driver's license on them when they go to the polls to vote. But they don't care enough to protest. They don't care enough to throw away their material life prospects on a quixotic quest for a job in media or academia. And, you know, they don't really care enough to do much of anything other than vote and watch conservative media. Conservative media, which tends to be, you know, it tends to be staffed by incompetent people because they're not idealistic, you know, like the liberals who are attracted to mainstream journalism are. And so I meant to introduce this concept at the very top to sort of organize things, and here I am, hopefully near the end. Um, and I haven't introduced, I think it's Conquest's second law, and I don't have it in print in front of me, but it's something to the effect of any organization which is not explicitly and constitutionally conservative will over time become liberal. And that's because liberals care more about their political preferences and their ideologies and their vision for the future of their society and their country than conservatives do. Conservatives tend to be more focused. They tend to be more aligned with material prosperity for themselves. You know, they direct their energy into their work and into their families and into creating good outcomes for themselves. And so they don't sacrifice materially in order to advance, you know, their agenda or their ideology or their idealistic values. They don't do that in the way that liberals do. And so while ordinal choice, you know, just caring enough to pick up your ID and go to the polls and vote every couple of years is enough to win elections, it's not enough to sway organizations. It's not enough to sway the culture. The liberals care more. And so they have an outsized influence in institutions, corporations, charitable organizations, nonprofits, that sort of thing. And so their priorities over time carry more weight and, you know, more authority, more ability to coerce people than do conservative values. Now, if you're my age or older, that sounds like madness because you grew up in a world dominated by conservatives imposing their values on other people. But that world is gone. That world is gone. It has flipped. And I'll finish with just a personal observation. And of course, this is anecdotal. This is just from me looking at the world through, you know, my eyes and my experience and my ideological lenses. But from what I can tell looking around, people who are hyper committed to a leftist, particularly a socially progressive mindset and who are angry, they tend to be really, really freaking unhinged compared to conservatives who are not particularly interested in talking about abstract concepts or, you know, comparing worldviews. I mean, they stumble upon a worldview largely because of where they're born and who they were born to, which is easy to adopt and easy to navigate the world using, and it focuses on practical matters. It seems to be rather grounded. It's not interested in abstraction. It's not interested in hand-wringing or self-accusation. And they just tend to be more grounded and happier people than leftists who, you know, particularly leftists who feel the call to, you know, denigrate people of their own race or their own, you know, gender orientation or, you know, their own country. I mean, America haters, I think, you know, people who want to distinguish themselves from these sort of plodding, conservative, you know, practically materially oriented mindset, who want to distance themselves from that and say, no, I'm an intellectual, you know, I'm a thinking person, I'm a caring person. It's just reflexive to hate on the United States. And I think that's stupid. I think that's absolutely stupid. But, you know, sometimes you have to adopt a stupid position in order to advertise your position or, you know, your status as a smart person. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to talk on these topics a lot more for the next Vault episode, and you will get to hear the girlfriend as well on that episode. Maybe even learn her name, or maybe we'll come up with a pseudonym. I think people behind the Patreon paywall already know her name. Anyway, if you'd like to know her name, join my Patreon. Half kidding with that. I mean, yeah, you absolutely should. Join my Patreon for $1 a month. I put up a lot of content. Most of it's free. The podcasts, the Vault podcasts are for the $7 a month subscribers. But there's other stuff that is not free, but I don't charge the full $7. It's $1. $1 a month. Do you like these? Have you watched this 15-minute video to the very end? If so, how about $1 a month? I feel dirty doing that, but, you know, I'm going to get physically dirty when I go up onto the mountain today. There's not enough snow to keep the dust down yet, and it's a lot of work, and it's dangerous. And I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. What I'm really enjoying is the people, though. I'll talk about that in a different video, or even better yet, behind the paywall, where I can tell you all the good stuff. All right, I'm out. Talk to you later.